All right, guys, welcome back. And today we're looking at the final topic, the final key knowledge dot point for Unit 3 Outcome 1. And this is what we are calling corporate culture. So here is our study design, and we are going all the way to the bottom of it. Here we see corporate culture, both official and real. So again, not too much in this particular key knowledge dot point. So this is what we're going to actually make of it. This is what we're going to talk about, and hopefully at the end of the video, this is the knowledge you're going to have and what you would be able to kind of explain as it relates to corporate culture. So first off, what is corporate culture? Why is it important in a business? The difference between official and real culture, that was actually specified in that key knowledge dot point. What we're going to call the indicators of corporate culture, which we'll talk about when we get there, and how to cultivate or develop a desired corporate culture. So that's what we're going to talk through on this video. First off, what is corporate culture? Okay, there's a really good definition at the top there, bold purple. That definition was the one that was provided by VCAR in their 2016 examiner's report as a good example of a definition to corporate culture. So obviously you could use that. Look, there's so many different ways to define corporate culture. I've given you another couple of versions there. Both of those are equally valid, I think, as well. So again, don't write all three of them down, but look through each and see which one kind of resonates with you more, and probably go with that one. Okay, so a commonly used one is actually that bottom blue one there, the collection of values and beliefs, ethics and attitudes that the people within a business have that guides the way the business operates. But again, as we move through this video, even if right now you're not understanding completely what we mean by corporate culture, once we've talked about what we're going to talk about, I think it will help you understand. So certainly by the end of it, you'll have a better understanding of what we're talking about. So for now, go with one of those definitions that kind of resonates more with you and get that one down. Basically, corporate culture, or I'll just say culture from this point on to shorten things up, it's all about how employees interact. First off, with one another within the business, but also with external stakeholders of the business as well. So customers, for example. The way to think of it, the way I tend to think of it, is kind of like the personality of the business. It's the feel or the vibe that you get when you're actually there within it. Okay, you can only get a sense of the culture of a business by kind of immersing yourself in it. Don't use the terms I said in there. Don't use those terms when you're answering questions, feel or vibe. That's just for me to kind of get the idea across to you. We need to use language which is a little bit more rigid than that. But yeah, it's kind of the personality of the business. And it usually develops in an organic sense over time from the traits of the people that the business hired. Okay, it's all to do with people. Okay, now why is it important? Okay, culture is a really, really key element in deciding or determining whether a business is going to be successful or not. Okay, if we have a positive, good, strong culture, basically what that means is you're going to have happier, more motivated employees who are going to be more productive. They're going to produce high quality work. You're going to have lower staff absenteeism, lower staff turnover, and all of that stuff combined leads to increased business performance and profitability. On the flip side, if we have a negative culture, it's basically going to have the opposite effect on all of those indicators and then the results. So if we have a negative culture in place in our business, we're going to have a less happy, less motivated staff. They're not going to be as productive. They're going to probably produce lower quality work. You're going to have high absenteeism, high staff turnover, and all of that is then going to lead to decreased business performance and ultimately reduction in profitability. So that's why it's important. You cannot overemphasize the importance of having a strong or a positive corporate culture in your business. Because of that, it's absolutely a key aspect of the role of any manager to always be developing, cultivating, creating. And those words actually are kind of used interchangeably in questions. It might talk about developing a culture. It might talk about cultivating a culture, creating a culture. All means the same thing. But yeah, it's a really, really key aspect of a manager's job to be constantly creating the best, the most positive culture within the business that they can, for all of those reasons that we just see right in front of us. The benefits of having, now this is kind of close related to what we're just talking about, but yeah, the benefits, what's going to happen, what good things are going to happen if we do have a positive corporate culture. We're going to be a more productive business. Individuals are going to be more productive. People are more productive when they're happy in their work. So that's going to increase business productivity overall. It's going to increase our product or our service quality, whether we're making something or whether we're providing a service. If we've got happy people working in a positive corporate culture, they're going to be providing a better service quality and customer service, the third one you see there. Happier, more motivated staff, again, lower absenteeism and staff turnover. Those are bad things in a business. You don't want, absenteeism is basically when people are not coming to work when they should come to work. Using the Australian vernacular, taking a sickie. You obviously want to minimise that. But if you've got a poor corporate culture, people are going to be taking sickies because they don't want to come to work. And ultimately, absenteeism leads to staff turnover, which is basically people leaving the business. So yeah, if we have the positive culture, it's going to lead to lower levels of those. Ultimately, all of that, a more successful and a more competitive business. Now, official and real. Now, this is very specific language. And I go back and we talk about this because this is actually specified in the key knowledge dot point in the study design, as you see there. So it says corporate culture, both official and real. So we know the importance of developing a positive culture. Okay, we've just talked about that over the last few minutes. Now, the first step in that process is to establish an official corporate culture. Okay, the official culture is basically what the business intends the culture to be. Okay, it's a formal written expression of the values and the beliefs of the business. Okay, so it's what the business is portraying to the world, that this is how the culture is. Okay, and it's kind of portrayed in mission statements and vision statements that the business might have, branding, advertising, logos, slogans, the way that customer service is provided. But basically, yeah, the official culture is basically what the business is saying. This is how it is. Okay. Now, the reality is that official culture that the people at the top of the business want it to be and intend it to be is not always reflected in the real culture of the business. Okay. The real culture is the culture that actually exists at ground level within the business. And this is observed or demonstrated rather by observing what actually occurs and the real relationships and the real interactions between the people. And all of that stuff is what we call indicators of corporate culture. So we've got our real culture is what they're saying. This is what we're striving for. This is what the management is saying it is. But then when you actually get into the business, is it really like that? And look, the reality is that very, very often the real culture is very, very different to the official culture. And also, if you think about it, there are a lot of businesses that have multiple locations. So McDonald's, Woolworths, Coles, and a myriad, obviously, of any other business you could name yourself. You know, there's different Woolworths around. So there would be an official Woolworths culture that the people at the top of Woolworths are saying, this is our culture. But you actually would, when you go to different stores, you can find that the culture within different stores is actually very different because of the differing management that is in each store, the different management styles being used, and the different types of people that are working there. So you often find real culture differing in different locations within the same business as well. And if any of you, say, work for McDonald's, and you're basically based at one store, but you've actually gone out and pulled a couple of shifts at another store, you might have seen this in practice, how working at one Macca's is a very different experience often to working at at another one because of the management. Largely it's to do with the management. It could be other things as well. But yeah, real corporate culture can be very, very variable, even within one particular business. Now, those indicators of corporate culture that I just mentioned, okay? So these are the things that give you clues about the real culture within the business, okay? And again, the only way to determine what the real culture is to actually get in there. You need to go and visit the business, walk around, talk to people, observe, and that will give you an idea of what the real corporate culture is like. So the prevailing management style, okay, is it very much a task-focused style that's being used, or is it a people-focused? Generally speaking, if task-focused styles are being used, you're going to find the culture is kind of much more formal. And if people-focused, a little bit more relaxed and maybe a little less formal. How the people interact with each other. So this is staff to staff, staff to managers, staff to customers, lots of different ways to observe this. And again, is this happening on a kind of more friendly level or a more formal level? The management structure. This is not something we particularly cover, but businesses have a management. How many layers of management you have within your business? You find tech companies tend to be quite flat. They don't have lots of layers of management. And if you have lots of different layers of management from the general bottom level all the way to the top of the CEO, that tends to mean that's a hierarchical structure. It tends to be a more formal type of culture. Flat structure, again, tends to reflect maybe a less formal, a more informal type of culture. The physical layout of the space, okay, is if it's an office, is it an open plan office? Or do they set things up so there's lots of separate spaces and separate offices? Again, that's going to tell you something about the relationships with the people and the level of formality. If the managers all have their own little offices hiding away and they're not kind of part of the broader team. The dress code, is it very formal? Again, thinking about an office. If you go to some offices in the city, you'll see that everybody is very much suited and booted. You know, the men will be wearing suits and ties, all that stuff. And if you go to some offices, you're going to see open collar, no tie, maybe no jackets. And again, that's just a reflection of the level of formality of the culture of that business. Rituals and habits. This is, for example, if you've ever seen a video of when there's a new launch of a product, an Apple product. So there's big hoo-ha in the store. You know, there's a new iPhone's coming out. So they do a big launch event, and sometimes it's very early in the morning, and you're going to get, these Apple fanboys kind of queuing outside the store, even overnight, so they can be the first person to get it. And, when the doors open, when the store opens, all the staff are lined up and they're cheering and they're clapping and they're going nuts. And, it's very specific to Apple. I can't think of another brand that particularly does that. Uniqlo. I've actually been at Uniqlo stores before they've actually opened the doors, and you can see they have these like clear screens so you can actually see into the store. And they do all these weird rituals, these exercises, and get themselves all pumped up before they open the doors. Pumping themselves up ready to kind of face the day and, help their customers and all that sort of thing. So, rituals and habits very much kind of become entrenched in the culture of the business. And then policies and procedures, finally. So how situations are dealt with. So customer service policies, how are we going to deal with issues that if there's any issues our customers have with the service they're receiving, written into our policies and procedures, that is, again, a really good indicator of the culture of the business. Are we people focused? Do we have a culture where we're going to be looking after our customers, or not so much so? So our culture is kind of a combination, not just these things, but this is a pretty decent list of indicators of culture. So if you kind of observe all this sort of thing and you spent a day in a business, you'd have a pretty good idea about the real culture that exists within that business. Now, how to cultivate. We said it's a really, really important key job for a manager to be constantly being aware of the culture and creating, developing, cultivating a culture, a positive culture. So there's a number of things that managers can do to actually do this. So we'll briefly look at a few of these. First off, management to be role modeling the expected behaviours themselves. So leading by example. Okay, Matt, if you want people to be a certain way, be that way yourself. Second one, recruit in line with the desired culture. So if part of your culture is to have very outgoing, chatty, gregarious, customer-facing employees on the shop floor that are going to be happy to go out and, be bubbly and chat to everybody, there's no point in recruiting shy and retiring types for that particular role, because you're not going to change their personality. Much easier to recruit people that are naturally like that anyway. All the training that you do needs to reinforce the desired culture. So any cultures that you're trying to create, to cultivate, any training you do needs to kind of back that up. The management style. So again, if you're really all about the people, you probably need to be using more people-focused management styles. A dress code. If you're trying to create some kind of formality in your culture, then perhaps a formal dress code, again, in an office environment, suits perhaps. So think about what the dress is going to suggest about the culture that you're portraying. And finally, recognizing and rewarding the appropriate actions and behaviors of the employees. So if people are doing the right things, then rewarding them for that. So a bit of a lame example, but the old employee of the month, McDonald's. In my day at McDonald's years ago, I don't know if they still do it, but we'd nominate an employee of the month, and the photo would go, employee of the month at the end of the front counter, and it would be up there, and then it would change, the next month. And basically, the employee that you are awarding that to, they're the employees who are, demonstrating the behaviours and the actions that you want them to demonstrate, basically. So that's a really sort of straightforward example of how you can do that. So just coming back to that summary. So what is corporate culture? Hopefully by now you've got a bit of a better idea. And again, we'll talk about this more in class and put some examples out there. Why it's important. Hopefully now you've got an idea about why culture is important and what are the benefits to a business of having a positive corporate culture. The difference between the official and the real. Remember, that's really, really key. You can be asked specifically about that because that is mentioned word for word in the study design. Some indicators of corporate culture, real corporate culture there that we just talked about. And then finally, the last thing we looked at was how managers can actually, develop, cultivate, create a desired corporate culture. So that's hopefully what you should now be able to do. So that is it for this particular topic, this particular key knowledge, and indeed for Unit 3, Outcome 1. So I will see you in the next video, which is going to be the start of Outcome 2. I'll see you then. Cheers for now.